John wanted his wife to dress just like the maid, but his wife is behaving like the mother of Jesus. She dresses and covers all parts of her body. She told her husband that she is a Christian, so she can't wear short dresses that expose her. Meanwhile, Sandra, the maid, is dressing the exact way John wants. "I can't even show you to my friends. How can I show you to them when you are not dressing attractively?" he would complain, but his wife would not listen. So one day, while the maid was cleaning the house, John was sitting at the living. He could not stop staring at the maid and her figure. And just like that, he began to have the feeling of cheating on his wife. At night, when John needed his wife the most, Elizabeth would be in a prayer meeting at the church, leaving her husband lonely. All these things made John really angry. Well, as for the maid, she knew her boss was beginning to stare at her, so she planned on doing more attractive things to get his attention the more. So one afternoon, John was at home and his wife was at the church like before. Sandra went to his room and told him that, "I want to clean your room." Sandra was putting on something really attractive and short. So while John sat on his bed, Sandra bent herself attractively while cleaning the bedroom. This got the attention of John, and this time around, he couldn't hold back. So he stood up and walked to her and told her to remain silent, and something happened between them. But as this was happening, the door suddenly slammed open and John's wife walked inside and saw her husband cheating with the maid. John later cheated on his wife with the maid, since his wife was behaving like the mother of Jesus. When his wife caught them, instead of accepting his wrong, he blamed his wife for his actions. "You are the reason why I cheated. You never dress attractively. You never had my time. You are always in the church, and I can't tell if I married the wife or the mother of Jesus," Johnson screamed. Elizabeth only cried and walked away sadly. She still loves her husband and promised never to divorce. John thought his wife would finally change after what she saw. He thought Elizabeth would now at least dress attractively or reduce the church meetings. But that is not what Elizabeth does. Instead, she even took her church meetings more seriously. She wore clothes that covered even more of her body. This is because Elizabeth believes that what is happening to her is a temptation that all real Christians pass through. So if she keeps praying, her husband will surely change. Well, as for Sandra the maid, she continues her job as a maid and still dresses attractively. Soon, John is feeling lonely again. He realizes that his wife has never changed. Instead, she has even gotten worse. And so John decided to cheat again. And so he cheated with the maid several times. And the maid was always giving it to John as he wanted. Till one day, the maid was not feeling too great, so she decided to check the hospital. The doctor ran some checks on her and handed her a letter saying, "Congratulations." The maid could not understand why the doctor was telling her congratulations. She looked at the paper and realized she was pregnant. And there is only one person she can be pregnant for. John got the maid pregnant because she was dressing more attractively, while his own wife was dressing like the mother of Jesus, going to church every day without giving her husband the attention he needed. The maid found out she was pregnant when she went to the hospital to check on herself. She was happy about that because finally she would become a wife and not a maid anymore. She came back and saw John with his wife eating dinner at the dining table. She decided to give John the test results right in front of his wife. Johnson collected the paper, looked through it and screamed, "Jesus!" His wife asked what the problem was, but John knew he had to keep it secret. My wife is nothing," he lied. "What do you mean it's nothing? I saw our maid gave you a paper and you screamed. I demand to see that paper now," Elizabeth said. "No, there is nothing on the paper," Johnson tried to convince, but his wife was not letting that go. She wants to know what is in the paper. Sandra was just there, watching the drama. Elizabeth got up and dragged the paper from her husband. She read it and realized the maid was pregnant. Immediately, she knew it was her husband because she once caught him cheating with the maid. This was the exact moment Sandra was waiting for. Elizabeth sadly and angrily left the table for her room, packed her bags and left the marriage to her father's house. She explained everything that happened to her parents, but they told her that too much of everything is a problem. Maybe you are taking your church more seriously than your marriage. Even the Bible tells us to be submissive to our partner. Sandra thought that she would finally become John's wife since Elizabeth is gone, but that was not what would happen. The next morning, Elizabeth went to the market and bought some attractive and short dresses. She brought them home and wore them. Maybe I am being too biblical. If you are in this situation, Would you change because of your husband? So Elizabeth left her marriage because her husband got their maid pregnant, since the maid was dressing attractively while Elizabeth was dressing like Mary from the Bible. She went back to her parents, who later advised her to reduce her church activities because even the Bible tells us to be submissive to our partner. This made Elizabeth buy some short dresses and wear them. 3 weeks later, she went back to her husband's house looking so flashy. When John saw his wife in those short and attractive dresses, he was shocked. He never expected that one day his wife would ever dress that way. Sandra, the maid who was standing upstairs, looked down and saw Elizabeth. She didn't believe her eyes. She was rushing down quickly to confirm, but that was when she made the greatest mistake ever. Her left leg slipped on the staircase. She fell, hit the stairs, and rolled all the way down. She fainted immediately as the fall was too bad. John and Elizabeth rushed her to the hospital, where the doctor confirmed that she lost the pregnancy, but she is safe. What do you mean she lost the pregnancy? It was just 3 weeks, John asked. Yes, 3 weeks is enough to get a miscarriage. The fall was too bad. You should thank God she is alive. So that is it. Sandra lost the pregnancy. She later told John and Elizabeth to live happily together. I was wrong for trying to destroy your marriage. I don't deserve to be your maid anymore, she said, and took her bag to leave. John and Elizabeth gave her enough money to mentor herself and start up a business. As for Elizabeth, she changed, but not into a full body. When she is with her husband, she is a baddie, but when she is outside alone, she makes sure she dresses well and covers herself. I am sure you understand the message in this story. No matter how close you are to God, looking good for your husband is important, and God knows that. But when outside or alone, you can dress as well as you want. The end.